Alrighty. So tonight we're going to start the next project. Things are going to start getting more complex and such. So far, we've done extrusions, we've done revolves, and now we've started combining things like that to make more complex shapes and the phone stand. Now we're going to start getting into some of the other options and more complex or potentially complex tools and combine them with other elements. What we're going to do for this is still using the vessel format because it's just a nice universal modeling format. We're gonna be building on that with, instead of like revolve and such, this is where we're gonna start using what's called a loft. What a loft is, we'll get into that in a moment, but the assignment is going to be, or is, you'll be creating actually two different models, so that way you have some option to experiment with it. But you'll be creating two bottles that will have both a handle and a cap. On that cap, we will actually be also creating both threads, so it will actually thread on, as well as a joint inside Fusion, so it will actually animate back and forth, so it combines parts. And what that will be is built-in two major components: the bottle and the cap. Now, of course, the bottle I have right here is more cylindrical and doesn't have a handle, but we'll make do. And hooray for soy sauce, because tasty. All right, so I put this up that it will be due on Monday, this coming Monday, but we're going to see how tonight goes. We might change that just to give you a little more time, depending on if we get to model everything tonight. Well, what we're going to be doing is creating two different lofted vessels. Each one will have at least two components, so the bottle and the cap. It will have at least one joint to animate that cap and locate it. The vessel will also have a thread, or will have threads, as I unscrew this and hopefully not spill soy sauce everywhere. We'll have threads both for the top of the bottle and inside the cap. Again, it will have at least one handle, and we're going to go over some options for that. And then you can assign appearances again. So if you want to make it glass, plastic, all of that fun. And some examples, obviously, syrup bottle, water bottle, growler, whatever you please. And you don't have to have the model on hand. It's just good for taking measurements. We're going through the modeling this class, as well as we'll see how it goes if we have to take next class as well. There we are. And we'll be using the Loft Tool. We'll be using offset construction planes. And again, I'm going to go over all of this with everybody, of course. We're also going to discuss the different options for creating handles. Ways you can use a pipe tool, a rail tool, or a round loft tool. They're very similar, but distinctly separate. Again, multiple components: the joint tool, creating threads, and again, the appearance tool. And of course, you can always play with details and adding those and such. And that will be the standard. Alrighty, so let's get started with this. I imported a model that I made before. And let me open this up. I started a new folder for Lofted Vessels. But basically what a loft is for, whereas for the rotate vessel, when we use the revolve tool, and let me change the appearance here so you can see it more clearly. If it changes, there we are. The revolve tool works excellent for fully rounded objects. So something that is more like a thrown cup or something like that. So it's cylindrical. Loft is excellent for making still somewhat rounded, kind of organic forms, but over more unique profiles. And that term is going to be very important in this assignment and just in using lofts. A profile is a cross section at any point in an object. Whereas before I showed you how to use and I'll demonstrate here again, under inspect, like the, the section analysis tool, which we did with like right at the center plate. And that was showing you splitting the object in half, basically how a revolve tool would work. Well, this works instead. Let me select my face here. And instead, oops, wrong one. I wanted the plane. This is going to be taking cross sections vertically, and the loft tool will actually generate a full form around a couple of, or however many you denote, major sketch profiles. So where the revolve was a sketch vertically in front of you that took that profile and revolved it. There you go. This is stacking several different sketches, and it creates a form around those profiles. So that's how that might work, or that's how it will work. This is just showing you some examples. So I'm going to cancel out of that cross section here. We will be showing you how to, I'll be showing you how to make different ways of making handles, connecting them, as well as you see on the bottle cap here. I'll hide the cap. There are threads on this bottle. This is also hollow. This is not a solid form. So far, we've been making hollow or solid forms by extruding sketches and such down through the body. With this, we'll be actually using the shell tool as well, which actually creates a hollow form or hollow space inside of a different form of or different body. Doesn't have to be rectangular or angular like we've been doing with extrude. It can create that through really any method. Really neat tools. And then finally, resize, unhide the cap. I'll also be showing you, if I grab this cap, I can drag it, and you see it is both moving upwards and it is rotating. Now, we'll define how to use these joint tools and everything later, and it's not actually interlocking right now. I clearly have to redo that. And as I changed that, my position icon came back up. I don't want to capture that position. I want to revert back to what it was before. So that's the stuff we're going to be covering. That's going to be a lot, but once we start discussing it, honestly, it surprisingly simplifies. Because like any of these we've been working with so far, you get a complex form. It's just a series of simple functions, just all pushed together. So let's get started. So I'm going to, like we've been talking about, best thing to do when you're starting, is let's save the file. So in the new folder, Lofted Vessels, example. Sure. Soy sauce bottle. All right. So I'm going to start immediately by creating a couple of new components. You could always do this later. I like to start it now. Just that way I have them defined. So I try not to confuse myself later on. It's still going to happen, but whatever. So I'll do one as bottle. I forgot to uncheck the activate component button. So remember to go back up and activate the entire tree. New component. And this is what I was talking about. Uncheck that activate checkbox. And with that, I'll just title that as cap. So great. Now I have those already established. So I'm going to activate the bottle component. Now what we're going to do, I'm going to start with one single sketch. And looking at my soy sauce bottle, I'm going to get a general sense. Now, again, the soy sauce bottle is not an ideal bottle, but I don't know what I did with my syrup bottle that I usually use as an example. We probably just finished it and I forgot. And which means, oh no, I don't have any syrup in the house. All right, so I'm going to start with just getting a couple of general dimensions. So what I'm going to measure, and I realize you can't see my ruler here. I'm not measuring the upper bottle, the entire cylinder. I want this lower part because this curves downward. So that is looks like about 45 millimeters. So I'm going to start a sketch. I'm working on the flat bottom plane here using a center diameter cylinder. That's where I'm working, right in the center. Go out, 45 millimeters. Great. Now this is where this process starts to get a little bit tedious. What we're going to start in doing is you would want to say like, all right, well, I'll keep doing the sketches and go up from there. That's not how this tool works. I'm going to finish this sketch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create other sketches further up and away from this bottle or from my starting point, which is the base. And to do that, I need to, technically you could drag sketches upwards, but that gets really problematic. Nail it, because if you make any changes, then you run into the word fell out of my head. I'm sorry. You run into world coordinate problems. just like before, when some of you had experienced, you dragged an object to somewhere, you may even have had selected capture new position, and you did something and it like snapped back to where it was before. Those are the problems. However, if you build a construction plane for each one, it gets around that problem, and then you can also make alterations as you like. So to build a construction plane, if you look up at your toolbar, main toolbar, I have already finished out of that first sketch. It's the default first button on construct. Click that. And first, what's going to ask you is, like before, where do you want to start? From what plane is your reference? I'm going to start there. Now I can either enter it numerically, a distance, or I can drag it upward. And what I'm going to do is I'm now going to measure up from that first cylinder, or that first circle, up to the next major point. So I'm going to measure up to there, and that is about, looks to be about 15, let's say 14 millimeters. 14 millimeters. Okay. Now, if I look to the side, you can see, and it's a little bit hard if I'm selecting right there, I'll unhide my original origin. So now you can see I have a sketch that's on my original main XY axis, or XY plane rather, but now there's another plane floating up in space. This is what we're going to keep working from. And we're going to keep adding more construction planes. Now, if you like, you can make a note on like your bottle you're copying. All right, where are the major points? As in, where does it change topography? Where are your major profile changes? So, all right, there's one right there where the bottle starts, or really it comes up to the main size. You can always measure either from the original flat plane or from your next one. So you keep stacking measurements. Doesn't really matter. It's however you prefer. So I'm going to measure up to where this shoulder of the bottle starts. And I'm going to measure from the very bottom, and that is 115 millimeters. So cool. I'm going to make another construction plane starting from the original origin. And I could drag it up or just enter numerically 115, 115. Great. Now I'm going to start to there. Next point is where the bottle comes down to the neck. Measuring to there, that's at about 140. So again, construction plane, or remember, if you right click out to the side, you have your little recent tool selection, and I just measure to there, origin point, 140. Hey, isn't that convenient? Went to right there. Did I say 140 or 145? 140 works. Now I'm running out of bits here. So 111 and 70. So that's 180. That's where the threads begin. Select there, 180. Great. Now it's going to continually make these construction planes larger. These have no real bearing. These aren't actually anything. These are just reference planes in space. Doesn't actually measure or matter. Now the final part is where those threads start and going up to the final tip. That's about another 20. So from here, this next one, instead of starting off of the final or off the original, sorry, I could start it from there, go another 20, same diff. Okay. Now I have my major construction planes already in place. From here, I can start to create my major sketch elements, my major profiles. Again, you do not have to make all your construction planes first. You could go point by point or layer by layer. It's up to you. I like to work this way. That way, those are already set, and I can make changes as I go. It's totally up to you. I'm still working on this I'm still working on this component. New sketch. Now, and if it's hard to see, you can hide the origin. And if I expand this component now, you'll see I have these construction planes options. So that way, if I need to, I can hide and such these planes or rename them so I don't get as confused. So I'm going to select that next one up from the bottom. And that profile of the bottle looks to be about 55 millimeters. Great. So if you look here, if you can see more clearly, I am working above that original sketch. And remember, the plane just gets generated, this grid just gets generated automatically. So I'm still working right from the center, or directly from the center, rather. That one's 55. Great. And if I look over, you can see that that sketch is slightly larger than the next. Great. Finish sketch. Start a new sketch. Now I'm going to work off of the next plane up. Do the same. Center. This one actually is also 55. So it's basically a cylinder from here to here. Finish sketch. Start new sketch. Working on the next plane up. Now the bottle shrinks down to about, looks like about 33 millimeters. So I'll start there, working right in the center, 33 millimeters. Finish sketch. Like I said, this part gets kind of tedious. This is a cylinder from there. So same, 33. Another sketch, next plane up, center circle, right in the center, 33. There we are. Finish sketch. Final one. And I may have mixed myself up here. I may have to add one more. Final one. That soy sauce smells good. That looks to be about 23 millimeters. So we'll start a sketch on there. That plane. Center cylinder, or center circle rather. 23 millimeters. Not 3, 23. There we are. Finish sketch. Okay. So now you can kind of make out where a bottle profile might begin. So here's where the Loft tool comes in. Under Create, or if you've added it to your profile bar, your toolbar, that's fine. Go down, Loft. And as you see, the example here, it creates a transition shape between two or more sketch profiles or planar faces. You can do, there's different ways of doing it. But you see the example here, it's going from a rectangle or square to a circle, and it automatically generates between those surfaces. So I'm going to select Loft. Now, major thing that's important about lofts, and I'm just going to hide the construction planes. There we are. You have the order you select your items is very important. You have to start from one end and go to the other. Now, does that matter if you start at the top and work down, or the bottom and work up? Yes and no. If you're just making the loft, it does not matter. However, what we're doing with the loft, we're eventually going to use the shell tool. The shell tool works best if you are active, or if you're using that on the last surface or sketch profile that you are working with. So I recommend start from the bottom, select your profiles from the bottom and go upward. So I'm going to select the first sketch, second sketch, third, fourth, and you see how it's automatically generating. Fifth and sixth. All right. So obviously that's problematic. That is not at all what the profile actually looks like. The bottle is much more cylindrical and between shapes, but it is trying to generate as it sees. Now you have some options here. Guide rails. Right now we're not using rails, so we'll just use the center line, and I'm going to discuss what guide rails are next after I show you how to play with making handles. So I'm just going to use center line. There's no active center line, so that's fine. I'm just going to use rail then. It's not really a problem. Yes, these are all connected. That's fine. I have chain selection. It just chains everything. You can click and unclick, see how it looks. Closed makes this a sealed object, or rather checking it makes it not. So I want to leave that as a closed. Just the end caps are the end caps. I don't need to add anything to that. You can play with the merge or tangent edges. This, depending on your model, can make big alterations. because these are all of my profiles are circles, doesn't really matter. If I was going between rectangles or squares and circles, it would definitely change. So I'm just going to leave that at merge. All right. So like I said, this doesn't really work correctly. So I'm going to actually save this as a new component so that I can throw that outward later, or I can throw that component separately and play with this again. So, all right, great. That just started a new component. It added it within the component tree. Cool. So you can see how it automatically generates these forms. So I'm going to hide this first one. Goes and hides all the sketches automatically. You jerk. So now I'm going to show you a different way of working with that same set of tools. Now this I'll probably have to add additional construction planes, and that's where the labeling can definitely come in handy. But if since my bottle is actually much more cylindrical, let's play around with that. I'm going to go to Loft, and I'm just going to work at the top on the top here. So with this one, I'm going to go from the top down. Oops, I accidentally selected that point, not that. So let's close that one. I didn't want that, just the center. I wanted the actual form there. All right. Basically the same thing. So let's select out of some of these here. Going from direct cylinders to in lofts gets kind of problematic. So what you can do is, and I'll show you the difference here, I'll just create this section here, one new body. Great. Now I'll do another loft, only this time I'm going to use just those two profiles, and it's going to create a direct cylinder. No, I don't want to cut. I'm just going to leave that as a new body as well. So this is how you can get around if you're trying to make direct cylinders or you're trying to clean up a form. This is an easy way of working with that. Now, the problem is if I did the same down here, well, that's just going to make a cone. So this is where you really need to be able to have additional shapes to play with. So I'm going to make another construction plane, and I'm going to drag this just below that one. So we'll say 12 because it's at 14 millimeters. Okay, great. So there's a construction plane there, and it automatically hit it. But your creating is not visible. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I'll go ahead and unhide all of these. That's problematic. Okay. So now I'm going to create a sketch. And this is where this stuff gets really confusing if you're not careful with hiding planes. Oh my God. Why is that not visible? It should be. Oh, there we are. So what I actually want is that one construction plane that's floating just below. There we are. God, that's hard to grab sometimes. And again, if you have trouble getting to where you want it to be, or getting your icon where you want it to be, hide bodies and such, that's fine. There we are. And what I want is I want this circle to be just slightly larger than that first one. So we'll go with, sure, 56. That's about right. And finish sketch. Because I want it to bump out ever so slightly. Great. I'll unhide the bodies, and I'm going to start one more loft. So now that I have this additional little bump out, when I start selecting my profiles, I now have that additional one. See, the first, if it were just between two, it's just a straight cone. But now I add that third one, and it rounds out that bottom because it's drawing a curved line. Effectively, how the Loft tool works, think of it as a fit point spline, like in the sketching. Instead of a straight line, a fit point spline, only it's drawing it all around, or it's drawing a infinite amount of them. It's not infinite, but it creates rather than a line, it creates a surface in the same way. So that's how it works. And now if I want, I'm going to leave this as separate bodies for now, but okay. But this is how you can create those little bump outs. So ideally, I would add another circle another plane just up here, and that would help me create that bump out there. But right now, these bodies, these bodies are all three separate ones. Now what I could do, I'll hide the sketches. Now I could go and select all three of those, use my combine tool, and join them all together. So that'd be great. But I'm going to leave it separate for now, just so I can work with it. Now, another problem is that top there. You get to threads, that sort. Right now, first, I want to work with other ways you can work with a loft to say, like, create a bottle, or sorry, the handle and such. Or for that matter, how I can create the cap. I can go and select my cap component now. And I know that my cap needs to be larger than that cylinder there because it's larger than the threaded surface will be. So I guess it will actually make sense to do this separately. All right. So right now, as it's showing, it kind of got messed up. 120. Overall, this bottle is about, let's just say, 200 millimeters tall. And we'll go and work on that component instead. So just to double check, I want to inspect and measure from the top, measure to the bottom. All right, it is 200. Perfect. So what happened is I must have skipped a step somewhere, and I should have added one more rung inside of here somewhere. All right, so let me unhide my construction planes, and I'll just hide the body for now. Leave the sketches. So what I needed actually was one more sketch there to delineate what's going to be the cylinder, direct cylinder for the threaded area. So if anything, or not if anything, it's what I should be doing, I'll make another construction plane. And I can start off with this one and just go up. Looks to be about, we'll just say 3 millimeters. Great. Okay. And I forget what that circle is. That is 23 millimeters. Perfect. Oh, this gets so confusing in here. Sketch on that new construction plan I just added. Center point circle. And that's supposed to be 23. Great. Now, when I unhide the body here, it might give me some trouble. No, because it just omits that. So this is why I left these as separate bodies. Because now I'm going to delete this one, or rather, I can go back on that first loft. Not that one. That's a different component. That loft. And let's edit this feature here. So like I said, it does matter what order you do things. So I'm just going to go back and delete some elements here. And instead, I'm going to start from the bottom. Did it hide one of my sketches? Oh, cancel that. All right, so this is problematic. I am actually going to have to, instead of editing this loft, because the loft here occurred in the history slider before I added that additional rung. So I'll have to delete that feature. That's fine.
Couldn't you move the plane and the sketch to before that loft in the timeline?
Possibly, but just to help with everybody what they're all doing too. Let's see here. I just want to delete the feature. Go away. There we are. Okay. So let's just add a new loft here. Now we're going to work upwards and see if it lets me do it this way. Or if it just goes completely nanners on me. Yeah, it's going to go kind of screwy on me. Okay, that's fine. So I'll have to construct this top here in multiple levels. All right, so this is where, no, I don't want that to, I want that to be a new body. There we are. Change selection. Yeah, it's really throwing it out there. Well, that's irritating. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not letting me loosen up my constraints here. All right, well, let's try from the top down. Maybe that'll help. There. Oops. Didn't delete all the profiles I need to delete. There to there. And it's still not really. Well, we'll mess with it more later. Okay, because what I wanted was just a straight cylinder here. So the other thing you could do, if you just need a straight cylinder, now is where I could also use an extrude tool and use that top profile and just go up to the next. There we are. And just keep that as new body. Great. So obviously that right there, I'm going to have to tweak the profiles a bit, but just for work's sake, as we're moving along here, let me go ahead and join all these together. So I'll do a from the right selection box, click all the things, combine, and join. Now I'm going to, again, do a new component just that way I can keep everything separate and I can always go back and alter things. So click OK. It's going to do another new component. Oops, I didn't manage to select all the things. That's problematic. But go back, edit feature. Just need to make sure I'm getting all of those. Why isn't it letting me? Well, that's strange. For some reason, it's not allowing. Oh, I must just not have actually selected everything at that time. At that time. Interesting. It keeps omitting stuff. All right. Well, I'll have to figure out why it's doing that. I'm not sure why it's doing that right now. But anyway. Well, I can't do the shell unless it combines everything. That's very strange. For whatever reason, it is not allowing me to select all four. I must have skipped. I must have done something. There's no reason it shouldn't be doing that. So let's try this. Maybe it'll only let me, maybe it has a 3-item cap. That's definitely not it. There's something up with this bottom one.
Does it have something to do with one of them being selected as the target body and the others being selected as tool bodies?
It shouldn't matter because they're all being, during a combine, it's just joining everything. It's not, one is not necessarily acting on the others. Unless that is the case, and I guess so. That shouldn't matter. But all right, I guess that's one of the quirks of Fusion then. All right, fair enough. Good call. Thank you. That's always fun. All right, so I do still want to throw it out as a new component just that way I can go back and play with this later. Again, weird. It is omitting that. I have no idea. That's so strange.
Is it including it? Is it keeping that one in the original component while having it also be part of the new component?
I don't know. Let me hide those, and I'll just I'll go down and activate that. Now it's still showing, but for some reason that one body remains. That is very strange.
That was what happened when I had to do on the phone stand when I connected
Yes.
3 legs. I selected those 3, and then the target was the back, and it all
Mhm.
becomes one. But it's, since you're combining, it's like, oh, this one is combining to these ones, I guess.
Right, right. And it makes a lot more sense when you're joining dissimilar items, but when you're basically stacking things,
Right.
yeah. Well, once again, it's all fusion functions on order of operations very structurally. So, all right, there we go. We all learned something important. All right, much appreciated. Thank you all both. Thank you both for the input. All right. So I have my bottle. It's somewhat wonky, and it definitely looks more like a dish soap bottle than a soy sauce bottle. So I'll have to work
I
with
think
that later.
while making the circle thing,
Yes,
I thought like on the top it was like a little bit bigger.
it is, and it's going to have the cap on.
Uh-huh.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually add threads and such on top of this.
Oh. Because of the that's making the round shape. I thought like
No, the round shape is occurring because of, and let me go back and I'll just hide these. The round shape is occurring because of I don't have the correct
yeah.
profile sketches here, or I'm not doing it in the right order. This between the top, between the neck, it needs to be a cylinder. I need to add in more, but just for time's sake, I just wanted to, or rather I need to add in some more elements like I did for the base, and it'll come out the correct way. But just for time's sake, I just wanted to try to speed run through this to try to get everybody informed on this stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, that. It's not a difficult fix. I just want to try to cover as much as we can tonight. So the next one I wanted to show you is the shell tool, and this will make this now solid body into a hollow body. So select shell, and what it does is it basically creates a it's basically the offset tool, but for a full body rather than just for a sketch line. And again, this is very important which face you select, because you want to select the face that is going to remain open. It's going to assume it's going through the entire new body here. But I want to select this top body here. Now, I will warn you, more complex shapes will definitely bog down your computer as it tries to compute the offset. So I highly recommend don't use the slider, but just do a numeric input. So I'm going to select 3 millimeters is usually a good thickness when you're 3D printing. And there we are. So that actually went pretty quickly. I'll try 2, a little bit thinner. Actually, it might need 3 just for the thickness. All right. So you have your other options here. Obviously, you can, if you're pardon me, creating a shell on the inside or outside, there you go. But just inside is what we want. Okay. So now, and let me change my visual settings to with hidden edges. You can see I can look down inside that bottle now. That is now a hollow form. Very cool. So now what I want to do is I was going to create the cap first, but I want to just go ahead and continue with this bottle. Now we're going to create the threads. And this is another tool that really works pretty easily in Fusion. Go to create. Down to the next set is thread. This automatically generates standard size threads. So you don't have to try to estimate or know like your serious pitches and everything else of like actual cutting threads and such. And when you select the faces you want to thread, which is why it was important that this top is a cylinder, it will automatically generate a set of threads for that size cylinder. So it's a 23 millimeter cylinder. You can see everything on the toolbox here. Everything else is auto except for thread. It's a metric thread because it's a metric size, and direction right hand. Select there. Now, this slider here relates to the size of the actual threads. You could do this numerically here, but honestly, I would just leave that however it generates. Now, one thing you're seeing is it kind of looks like there's threads, but they're not really there. So to save generating space, just so that way the computer doesn't have to keep computing all these, or especially if you have a much more complex model, it will generate the threads. And if you exported this, it will generate the threads properly, but it's not going to show them all the time. Or the first checkbox that is default unchecked, select that, and now it will actually model those threads. So now you see why I went ahead and made that bottle that much thicker, because these threads, the automatically generated ones, are really quite deep. Yes, you can change these around. You know, there's most certainly different sizes. Play with something a little bit more, a little bit finer, or not. I would just honestly, I would just leave it as the default threading. That makes fun. That makes the most sense. Because like a bottle thread is not a standard thread. It's probably more like a pipe thread or something like that. So if you want to play around with that, great. But for the purpose of this project, I would just leave it as the default. And there you go. That's how you generate threads in Fusion. So I have a now hollow body that has threads. Cool. Now I can go and create my cap. And basically with this, I could just create a cylinder or so, or better yet, I'll show you a couple different ways. So I can start at the top here because I have a construction plane up there already made. However, that construction plane is within this other bottle component. So it wouldn't be the worst idea to make a new construction plane. So I'll go ahead and do that. Construction plane based off of the origin plane. And I'm going to drag this up. I know the bottle is 120. So I'm going to make this at, let's say 205. A little bit less. 202. Sure, whatever. All right. So there we are. Now I have a different plane that I'm working from. So again, create sketch. On there. Cylinder right smack in the middle. Now, when you're trying to select things, often it's going to try to catch like the body underneath. So you're probably better off just hiding that component. Oh, because that's component 4. My mistake. There we are. So that bottle cap, the top was 23. This needs to be larger. So I'm going to say, and the cap itself, if I measure it on my actual bottle, it's actually like 28. So there we are. 28. Great. Finish sketch. I'll unhide that bottle just so I can see what I'm doing here. Now I can extrude and extrude that down to about 18. Or in this case, negative 18. There we are. And shirt, new body, all that fun. Great. And now I will go ahead and hide that bottle component again. Now there's 2 ways you could do this. You could create another sketch, draw it on the bottom of that cylinder, a circle on the bottom of that cylinder. I know that the hole I need is 23 to match the other one. Okay. Finish sketch, extrude that inner circle and extrude upward. And remember, if you'd like, you can use the extent to object and select the top of the cap. And instead of letting it go all the way through, you could use the offset of like, yeah, we'll do like 2 millimeters. Oop, -2. Boop. And it already knows you want to cut into that. Great. So there's a hollow into there. Or what I could have done is I could have also just created a straight cylinder and then use the hole tool, which that will generate threads inside of that tool. But just for the sake of consistency, what we've been doing, I'll just stick with what I did there. So create, go to, oops, I missed it, threads. select the inside surface, and it's going to again pick designation 22. Now, double check that you're getting the same one as before. That should have been that same 24 and 24.3. Cool. There we are. Make sure it's modeled. Okay. Now those are the same threads as the bottle. Now, are they actually modeling matched? No, and that's okay. So in the example, I have a bunch of different features and such on there. And I created that with the circle pattern and a chamfer. So in here, what I ended up doing is I went to the top to create those threads, or sorry, to create those little notches. I made a sketch. Oops, it's selecting the whole bottle that's not showing right there. On the top, you have to select the top, otherwise it won't really be sure where you're wanting to work. And I'm going to use a center cylinder or a center circle again, and just make a circle on the edge. And I don't know, we'll go 0.75. Sure, why not? It's a little tiny feature. We'll see what 1 looks like. Yeah, that's fine. Great. Okay. Just that one little feature. Now, again, remember before, I'm going to use the circle pattern tool, but I'm not going to use it in the sketch because I want to create the feature first and make multiples of that. So click OK. I'm going to extrude that circle. And if you want, you can select both of them. And I could drag this all the way down, or again, I could use extent type to object, and I'll just select the bottom so it goes all the way through. Cut? Yeah, definitely. Cool. So I made that one little notch. Now I can use the circle pattern, select that feature, and with my axis, now the problem is it's still basing off of the origin plane that's way down there. So just select my Z-axis, go back, zoom back in, and now the default is 3. So let's see and here you can just start doing numerically. So when you start making a bunch of them features, again, I recommend doing it numerically rather than using the slider because it will definitely bog down your computer. 30, not quite. Let's try 40. Closer. 45? Ish. Let's see what 50 looks like. A little more. Yeah, I like that. Okay. And it's going to take a moment to calculate. Now I've created all of those little features there. Cool. Well, thing is, like on the example, I had this little chamfer at the top, or you could use a fillet, whatever, just to clean up that edge. Well, if I wanted to add that, well, the problem is now I can't really grab that edge. But what I can do, go back in the history slider now. Since that is already created, I can now make a chamfer there and there. We'll do like 1 millimeter. That's fine. Select OK. And that, again, drop that feature down between there, between the original sketch of making the bottle cap and before I made the features. Now I bring my history slider to current. It's going to recalculate. And now it just showed, and now it's showing me, and here, let me change my visual style so you can just go to visible so it's not quite so confusing to look at. So now it has that chamfer, all of those features, but I didn't have to try to go in and select that stuff after the fact. All about playing with the order and such. Okay, so that's how you would make that kind of cap. And that's just a simple cap. You can play around with other features, other designs. I'm of course going to be showing you other ones, but now I have, and I'll just reactivate the whole thing so that way it's not ghosting everything out. Now I have a bottle cap and a bottle that now looks like a Pepto-Bismol bottle. Cool. All right. Okay. Resume recording. All right. So I have the bottle, have the cap. This is where, obviously, again, my example bottle does not have handles, but we can play with that. I can add something in. So what I want to do is next show you some different examples of ways you can use Loft tools and the other tools we have. Pardon me. I told you about the the Loft, but I also mentioned that there was a pipe tool, and a sweep tool. What these are two different versions of lofts along a line. So let me start a new component and I'll show you, or better yet, let me start a new project just so I can show you more cleanly. And I'll save this as examples, pipe, and sweep. Okay. So with the loft, we did incremental sections and such, incremental profiles that then we generated a surface around those. I can do the same thing, but along a line. So first, let's start a sketch, as always. And I'm going to start by creating what will become my path. And I'm just working on the flat plane here. And we'll just pretend that that will become a handle. Kind of looks like a handle, kind of sort of mug style. All right, great. Now I can create the profile sketches in the same sketch, or I can do it separately. But for this sake, I'll just go ahead and do it here. So what I'm going to do is I need to create two profile sketches. Like I said, you can do it here. And I just said I'd do it in the same one, but it actually causes problems because this sketch is built around the XY plane. I'm going to finish that sketch. I'm going to start another one. And this next one, I'm going to start on the YZ plane so that I worked my profile on the flat plane. Now I'm going to make my sketches, or sorry, my line profile in the flat plane. Now I want my sketches vertical. Because like looking at, let's say, a mug handle, yeah, this is going to be the overall shape, but what is the actual like cross section? Well, that's pretty much what all of these work around, is the idea of cross sections. So I'm going to start a center rectangle on this plane, but I'm going to snap it to the end of that spline. And sure, 12 by 24, whatever. Okay. But for the other one, I'm going to create a circle, snap to that end, and sure, let's say 10, whatever, it doesn't really matter. All right, finish sketch. So now I have this profile, and what the loft is going to do, it's going to draw a blended surface between this rectangle and this circle. Go to create. I'm going to go to sweep does one along this profile. Loft can do the same, but sweep works a little bit better for this. I'm going to go sweep, profile. That is referring to these forms. Profile one goes to there, path, select there. It's going to create a whole thing all along that one. Now you can do this with swirling. You can do different versions, things like that. So the sweep uses one single profile that you can custom create. And operation, we'll do new component just so you see it that way. Great. I'll label that as sweep. Okay. Hide that. Always hides my sketches afterwards. So now I'll show you what the pipe tool does. The pipe tool is like a sweep or like a loft, but you don't get to pick the profile. You only get to pick the path, and it automatically generates, like a pipe, a circle. So you can decide how thick you want it. Right? We'll go with 12. Great. Do you want it to be hollow, like a pipe? Now it's hollow. You then select the thickness. We'll go with like 1 millimeter thick. Yeah, so I have a tube here. You have different options. You can pick from circle, square, triangle, and you can rotate that triangle around. But we'll just go with circle. There we are. And I'll get new component. That's a pipe. I'll hide that. Now the combination, the loft. So I showed you the loft before. That was making the bottle. But what I can do now is I can select my profiles here and here. And it's going to cause problems because it's not going to generate just yet. But now, yeah, see, there we go. Error. Yeah, whatever. But this is where we have the guide rails. Select my guide rail. Pick the rail. What's your problem? Rail does not touch all the profiles. Yeah, it does. Or do it. It should. Ugh. That should have snapped right too. So this is where we get to find out where I messed up. Zoom into one profile. That's connecting. Well, that doesn't make a lick of sense. That is, in fact, connecting. All right, fine. We'll use center line. Great. I don't know why it used a center line, but not the other. Okay, fine, whatever. Same deal. So now you can see it blends those two together to create a in this case, a semicircle. So that's the difference. You can create handles auto-generated as a sweep with one profile, a pipe with an automatically generated profile. And again, I'll create this as a component. Come on. It's got to catch up. There we are. Or the loft using at least 2. You could still add multiple profiles within this. You could go back, tweak that profile there. I could go in. Now it does make it difficult if you try to add like chamfers and stuff to sides because it doesn't really know what to do there. Sometimes. Apparently this time it's cool. Oh, no, it's not. It is now very confused. Oh, okay, well, fine. It didn't used to do that. So that's how so those are some easy ways to create handles. I'll save that. Yep, user saved. Super duper. So how do you apply that to the bottle? Now, again, yes, I know that soy sauce bottle doesn't, but apparently my Mr. Bubbles Bubble Bath or Pepto-Bismol bottle here it does have a handle. So I'll go ahead and make sure to activate the current component, the one that I actually want to model on top of. And first, I'm going to start by creating a sketch, looking flat on that back grid, the back profile plane. I will select a fit point spline, and I'm going to start over here. So one of the things we can deal with is it won't automatically snap to the edge. There's a way to do that, but just for time's sake, I can just get close and then we can move the finished product to it intersects. So sure, this will now be a very fancy soy sauce bottle. So we'll start there and I don't know. We'll play around to like that. Cool. Again, you can tweak these, click and drag the actual vertex. Select again. I can pull the handlebars around. You can tweak around however you like with that. So you can always fine tune that. Like I said, these do need to be separate sketches. So click finish. Now, just so I can see what I'm doing, I hide that body. And I want to create another sketch. Now, and it automatically assumes that I'm working on that since I've turned, but let's just confirm. Yep. On the XY plane. Where's my origin point? Oh, it's not showing it. That helps. Or sorry, not XY, on the XZ plane. That's what I want. Great. All right, so I'm going to start with, I'll do a circle. And I'm going to snap to the end of that plane there, or sorry, that profile. And sure, 4 millimeters works. Now, you don't have to do like a rectangle or circle or anything. You could do like an amorphous blob if you feel like it. I can't guarantee that it'll work correctly, but you can always go back and tweak it. But I'm going to start with a center point rectangle. Snap to the top. Sure, 12 and 4. Neato. You can, of course, go through. You can add your fillets and such as you like. I can adjust this. Let's make that 2. Sure. What is my linked? D31. Repeat fillet. Yes, yes, yes. D31. Tell you what, I'll leave it that way just for example's sake. Finish sketch. Now I go back up, create a new loft. Select my profiles, that one, and that one. Yes, yes, yes. Warning, warning, warning. Center line. Select that profile, and it generates profile. What happened? Why did it create that on a... Okay, that is problematic. All right, for some reason it generated it. I must not have actually selected the plane correctly. So I'll cancel this. All right, always a good thing to figure out is how to fix something. So I need to select. I want to move. Use my move tool. Sketch objects. I need that one. Feels like I accidentally selected more than I want on that. Double click on that profile, and we'll do the same for that one. All right. Now, rotate up, looking straight up, and I just need to rotate that 90 degrees. Doesn't matter which direction. Okay. Great. Those rotated as I need. That was weird. Go back, loft. Now select my profiles. Why isn't it letting me? Nope, not what I want. Did I, as I moved those sketch objects, what happened here? That's very strange. Try it again. That one? And why isn't it letting me select that one now? Ugh. All right. Looks like I got a constraint error. Edit sketch. It should have been just fine and dandy. What's going on here? All right. Well, one of the issues I can see, it looks like it's not a closed profile, whereas here, highlighted blue. Go back up to the top one, not highlighted blue. So there's something very wrong with it. I must have done something that broke its edge. Not entirely sure what. So just for example's sake, I'll go ahead and, that might be it. I think the radius of my fillet is too large. Yep. So what's going on here? Let's drop that down to 1. Oh, well, that's very not what I wanted. All right, so this profile is apparently just full of problems. I don't know what's going on, so we'll just fix that real easy. Delete it, and I'll start another one because I don't know what's going on there. All right, fine. Another center line. There we are. Yes, on that plane. And what was it, like 12 by 24 or something like that? Or 8, 12. Sure, great. And again, we'll just fillet those. Sure, 2, why not? Sometimes it's faster just to, come on. 2. 2. Yeah, I think that fillet was for some reason too large, or and at some point it altered and definitely mixed up. So, all right, cool. Now I have 2 proper fillets, or sorry, 2 profiles. Now we go back to the loft. Select my end profiles. Select my center line. What's the problem? Not visible. Oh, because I had bodies hidden. There we are. All righty. Now we got it going. Okay. New body, super good. It's floating off in space. That's mildly problematic, but that's okay. We can fix that. Okay. All right, now handle-tastic. So what I can do now from here, because it is in fact floating off the surface, I did that intentionally, just because sometimes it is difficult to snap directly to the profile of the actual vessel that you're creating. So now what I can do, use the move tool, not sketch objects. I want the body. But that one. All right. So this is one of the problems sometimes that it will automatically generate local coordinates to like for whatever vertex or whatever you just selected. So instead, what I'm going to do, make sure that like sketches are hidden, all that fun. And I'm just going to select with a selection box, and it still did it. No, that's going to do the whole thing. All right. Well, if it's forcing you to do something like that, and because it's generated off, because it's an object generated from a loft, especially curved ones like this, sometimes it does stuff like this. So an easier way to get around that, because what I want is it to actually like just move left and right. So what I'll do is I'll hide that first body. Now, when I go to select, I can select from like just an endpoint. Now I have a like reasonable set of coordinates to work from. Now I'll move this over so that it intersects the bottle. Cool. Okay. That was less painful than it should have been, or at least more awkward. All right. Now I can join these 2 together. So you can make all this stuff separately, glue it all together after the fact. So use my combine. Target body is the first body, the actual bottle. Tool body is the handle, because that's what I'm joining to. And we'll select join. Great. Now what happened? Why is that ghosted? Oh, I must have accidentally had the create new component active. Yep, my mistake. I kept making more and more and more components. So that's just makes things awkward. Really, it just makes it hard to see what I'm doing. But there we go. Great. You didn't need to do it that way. I just forgot what I was doing. Now, in this case, it worked well because you can see inside that, or rather, let me change the visibilities with hidden edges, and you can see through the bottle. Because I made that shell operation, the walls thick enough, it did not leave like a weird little floating tail inside. If that happens, you can go back and change the profile line to better match what you need. All right, so those are joined. If you want, you can go in and add like merging fillets and things like a fillet right there at that edge. And we'll say like 1, see what that does. See if that goes completely nanners. Nope, it just blends the edges together. It's a nice way of doing it. I'll add another one right there. And 1 again, that's fine. Yeah, sure. So that's just a corner fillet, surface to surface, and it just kind of blends the parts together, that's all, rather than it just being a really hard butt against one another. Great. So that's my bottle. Again, I'll need to tweak this top section anyway. Unhide the cap, and just so I'm not going cross-eyed trying to see what I'm doing, I will go back to shaded with visible edges only. I will activate all the things. There we are. Starting to make a bottle. Next is the joint. So far, we've really just been making parts with the Loft Tool, but really basing it off of everything we've been doing so far. Sketches, merging sketches, extrusion, cuts, using circle patterns, things like that. This is a completely new aspect. Joints. So in the assembly toolbox, right where it has new components, this is where we have different joints. Now, for the most part, you're just going to be using the default joint. And what this does is it allows you to actually animate components as a mechanical item in Fusion. Really great thing. It definitely gets a little bit, it takes a little bit of getting used to, depending on what you're doing, but it's a pretty cool tool and they've made it pretty streamlined. So as it says here, you can add this to your toolbar. So if it's not already there, you mouse over joint, 3 dots, add that to toolbar, and I'm going to add mine by shortcuts also. Or you can press J, and that will create joints. All right. So in a similar fashion to some other things like the combine tool, you have your main body, you have your main target, and then you have the thing that's going to move. So if it's going to stay put, that's your first component selection. If it's going to move, that's your second. Now, right now, we have there's different modes. We're not going to mess with the between view faces and two edge intersections yet. We're just going to work with simple motion. And what you need to do is select, pardon me, in between the area you want it to work. And let that make a little more sense. So first I'm going to hide the cap because I want my joint, the first part of my joint, to be at the top of this cylinder. Now, sometimes, and this is actually one of the updates, they've updated the little icon for joints, so it's a little bit easier to see what you're doing and your references. So I mouse over the top, and sometimes it won't let me select exactly that. You can see that as I move my mouse around, it's actually dropping down inside that cylinder to some other vertices and such. Now, if I get to that center point, yeah, it actually was letting me snap to it. Great. But if you're having trouble selecting stuff, what you can do is you can find something that shares that same plane. And what I mean by that is like the top of this lip here. I mouse over that, and you see that it highlights in kind of a dull color. It kind of glosses over. And now you can see in the center of the circle, center of the cylinder, as I mouse over this plane, it creates a little reference icon. It's a little plus sign. It's hard to see, I know. If I mouse over here, hold down Control, that locks your selection to that plane. So now if I mouse over here, oops, what's going on here? Stop doing that. Oh, it must have changed since they added the new features. All right, that's probably what they streamlined on that. Well, that's kind of convenient. All right, well, I'm selecting right there. It was strangely, when I hold down control, it's strangely locking to something else, and that's not at all what I want. Ah, there we are. Now it's locking right there, right smack in the center. Now, it ghosts the object because you're now done selecting that part. So now I want to unhide my cap, and if it helps, hide the first component, because I want the other side of my selection, the inside of the cap, because that cap's going to snap to the top of the bottle. Same thing. Now I'm selecting the bottom surface of this cap. You can see as it highlights under there, tumble around if you need to get a little bit easier access to seeing what you're doing. Select there. Now when I unhide that component, now I have, oops. Now it's asking me to align the joint. Now, first, we need to select what kind of joint it actually is. Right now, the joint alignment, everything, perfectly fine. That's where it is, because we were able to snap it all in place. It was built in place. So there's two tabs. There's position, which is what we're doing, selecting the position, and motion. Right now, it's a rigid joint. Basically, you would use this if you just had two parts that were like going to be assembled as like glued together, basically, but you still wanted to show them as a joint because you can actually do an exploded view of stuff. It's pretty cool. But you have a bunch of different options. If you select revolute, it's revolving, and that's problematic because it's spinning the bottom. And slider, sliding up and down. Cylindrical. Yeah, that's not supposed to be doing it that way. We actually want cylindrical. And when you click animate, all right, well, I'll fix that in a minute. Okay. All right, I think what may have happened is I got confused on what I was doing there. The joints, I think I should have actually I actually got that backwards. Anyway, in the hierarchy tree, you have a new drop-down, joint. You can control different elements here, but if you go just to the first part, just the main level, this little point here, edit joint limits. Click that, a new toolbox comes out. I really don't know why these aren't one and the same. But this is where you can work with your different parts. All right, yeah, this is just going to confuse the hell out of everything. I got that backwards. So let's go back, edit joint. I need to clear out my selections and because I got it backwards. Okay. I want to select the cap. Why is it doing that? Great. I'll just delete it entirely. I don't know why it's doing it that way. All right, so inside of the cap, do the same thing. I'm just doing it exactly backwards. Mouse over that plane, hold control, lets me snap over there. Super duper. Unhide the cap. There we are. My mistake. Motion, still cylindrical. Super duper. That's what I want. Okay. Same deal. Go back up to the cylinder joint. Edit it. All right. So this is where you can set limits. So right now you have two options because the cylindrical joint goes up and down and rotates. So rotate, yeah, we can let it go 360. Hit animate, and it rotates. However, I want to adjust the slide. So first, I'm going to select minimum, and we'll leave that at 0. That's at 0 point. Maximum, you can use You can do it numerically. You can do any of these numerically, or you can use a slider. So you can, if you look in here, if I zoom in, you can see these little flags. That's what you can slide. So as I drag that, now I've got a number, a numeric input pop up. I can continue to drag that if I want. We'll just make it an even 30. Cool. Now when I animate, no, I don't want that to be 0. I want minimum to be 0 and maximum to be 30. Thank you very much. Now it'll go from 0 up to 30. So that's how you can set limits. You can click arrest and it'll just pause between. But I'm just going to leave that off. Click OK. Cool. So now when I click and drag this, I can actually click and drag the cap. Oops, skipped a step. Before you do that, you can animate it with the actual icon there, but that's a very foolish way to have to go all the way around. Cancel that. What you could do, or what you need to do, is you see when I clicked and drag, tried to click and drag the cap, it drug everything. And I don't want that. And of course, revert icon comes up. Revert, I don't want that. What you can do is you can ground one of the objects. And the one you don't want to move is what you want to ground. And basically what it does is it just tells Fusion, all right, this is the thing I want to have locked in place. It doesn't move anywhere. So what you do is you go to your item. In this case, go to body. There we are. Right click on the hierarchy tree part. What the hell? Ah, there we are. Looks like and then you can't just ground it to a single body anymore. Awesome. Love when they make these little changes. All right, so selecting the entire component. Right click on the component. That is the second option on your right click button. I click ground. A new icon pops up in my time slider, little pin. Now, and it changes the icon of the component. It puts a little pin next to the cube. Now, this object, this body, this component cannot move. If you want it to move, like you say you're making a more complex model and you want it to move, right click and then unground. Or you can do it on the history slider. Now, when I click and drag this cap, that stays put, and I can move it up and down within the limits I set, and I can move left to right, and it will rotate. So it's just an easier way to animate the thing. I don't want it to be in the new position, so revert. There we go. So like I said, I have a few things I want to go back and fix on this. But I made a handle that goes from more of a rounded rectangle to a circle. That's the same way you could go about creating a loft body. Create different examples as you prefer. I created and I'll hide the cap. I put threads on the top. It is a hollow bottle. Unhide the cap, hide the body. I made a cap with features. I added threads into that, and the two of them are joined together with a joint. So I know I just threw a whole lot of stuff at everybody, but this is the main part of the project, and I would like you to make 2 different ones. That will allow you to play around and experiment. You want one with 1 handle? Great. You want one with 2 handles? You could have gone back, or I could have gone back, and I'll just activate that final component there. I could have made 2 handles and made 1 on either side, something like that. Just different ways you're going to go about this. So experiment and play. You're referencing off of an actual bottle. If you don't have something, try to take some rough measurements off of some photos or something like that. That's perfectly fine. I'll go ahead and save this. You're welcome to go through this project as you like. But that is the assignment for what we're doing. Now, like I said, we're going to see about it. I would like to be able to kind of move through this because we've got still a lot to try to cover for the semester, but this is a lot to work on. So let's see where everybody gets. Pardon me. Let's see where everybody gets, but realistically, I'd like to try to move forward, but we'll see if that works. As in, if we can do it, if we can have it due next week, that'd be great. But let me know. As far as let me know what kind of issues everybody is having and such. If you're having problems, if you have a lot of questions, because we just covered a lot. So that is the Lofted Vessel assignment. Stop recording there.